the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.
Welcome to the Live Life. This is the March edition of the show. We are a subsidiary show of AV Nation. We come to you monthly to give you insider's perspective about live events, staging, and event production. With us today, we have a very special guest. It's David Frey. He is the producer of the Lockn Festival. Lockn Festival will be in its fourth year this year, and we will hand it over to Dave, give himself a brief introduction. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks. It's an honor to be on the show. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we're in our fourth year this year. We're lucky that we've been able to do this. Basically, to me, one of the things that's been really unique and at the core of this is that my partner, Peter Shapiro, and I have a long-standing relationship that goes back to when I managed Blues Traveler and he owned Wetlands, and Blues Traveler kind of, started there. And so we're good, old, fast friends, and we decided we wanted to look at doing a festival together because we had a lot of like-minded ideas about it. But I think the neatest thing to me is that Pete and I book a show that we'd like to see, and we've been super lucky that we're not just two guys standing alone in a field watching a great show by ourselves. So that that we've been fortunate enough to gain an audience so quickly.
Well, I've read that about you in the past and in other interviews that both you and Peter are great fans of this music, and these are all your favorite bands that have come together to be at the Lockn Festival. That's
correct. Yeah. No, we book a show that we'd like to see. And we're trying to run a show that we'd like to go to. So, and that always presents challenges. There's always tweaks and can always be better. So we're constantly trying to improve upon things.
Now, I'm an avid jam band fan, and I've been to a lot of festivals. And Lockn Festival captured my attention. The first year I was in the second year was my first Lockn Festival, and there's many elements about Lockn Festival that captured my attention, and primarily when I walked into the festival grounds, I noticed how nicely it was laid out with the vendors, with the booths along the side for doing volunteer work. I also noticed the ADA platforms. I noticed the ease of security of getting in, and most notably, the side-by-side stages that when one band finished, another band immediately started. Can you tell us a little bit about how that idea came about?
That was something that there's a couple ways to do it, and we're actually not going to do that this year. We're going to have a turntable stage, which will be able to have the same effect, where we can go from one band into another. But it was something, it was something that they did at Wetlands a lot, where Spin Doctors that go into Blues Traveler or Aquarium Rescue Unit would go into Widespread Panic, that we'd done on Horde Festival, but in a different way initially, where at Horde we had all the bands put their backline up at the same time, and we would have the drum risers kind of go back and forth. So Blues Traveler play, and then as soon as they were done, Widespread Panic's kit would move up, and Blues Travelers would move back, and he'd change the riser. And so that was how that kind of started. Was the bands just did these Segway sets, they were called, and fans loved it, and the bands, were friends and worked it out, and it started with the bands, obviously. So, and it has to that has to lie with the bands. If the bands aren't going to do that, then you can't make bands do something that they're not going to do or don't want to do. So, in certain instances, that we've been able to, encourage the bands to try to do that more often than not. So, but with the two stages right next to each other, that was something that I had first tried when we did the Tibet show at RFK Stadium in Washington D.C. in the mid-late '90s, and that worked really well there. But the next year we used the turntable, and that worked just as well also. So we're going to go to a larger stage with a turntable this year. But the basic premise of it is that we don't like competing music. We just like, it's one band at a time. The band is the focus of what's going on, and as a result of that, our fans or the people that come to the show are a lot more focused on music. They're a lot more music-centric. There's really no distractions to that. It's not like there's 5 bands all playing at the same time and you've got to run from stage to stage, take your selfie with the band, or whatever's going on at some of these other shows. I don't really know, but to me, if I'm watching a band and I'm into them, they get to the quiet part of the song and then you hear, Rage Against the Machine rocking out over the hill, kind of ruins the moment. So there's that, and then there's just the part of it where at my age, when I go to a show, I don't want to walk around all that much. I get settled in my spot. I want to be there. You can just hang out there and go, okay, I'm watching Tedeschi Trucks here. I have to turn about 40 degrees this way, and I'm watching Black Crowes there. And then I turn about 40 degrees this way, and I'm watching Widespread Panic. I'm happy. I don't want to be running all over the, I can sit down with bring my lawn chair or whatever, and enjoy the show. So we've kept it. I think the people that come to Lockn are more perhaps music-centric than people that go to other festivals, because our scene is about the music. It's not about, the clique of people that may be there, or about skateboarding, or, whatever else the theme may be.
Right, you really hit the nail on the head there, because I've been at festivals where I've had to make some tough choices between 2 bands I wanted to see at opposite ends of the venue, and, what do I do?
Yeah, especially when they play at the same time. You get to see half of each. That's no good.
I have a quick question for you. This also says, because the band's back-to-back, that gives everybody excitement, it keeps constant music, and it gets a lot of people in it in a certain amount of time, but how do you coordinate that with, say, the merch people and the vendors and stuff like that? Does it not take away from that aspect, or am I missing something in that?
No, it does a little bit, but that's not what our show's about. So if they don't do as well, it's not, and they all do pretty good, because I think, at some point people are like, yeah, I'm a huge Tedeschi Trucks fan. I'm not that into the Black Crowes, so that's when they're going to go get a beer and go to the bathroom and hit the merch tent. I mean, if you're out watching bands for 12 hours, you're not going to, you're going to, at some point, have to get up and go to the bathroom or move around or do something. You can still hear it everywhere. I mean, we've got PA delays all over the site, so it's not, that's not an issue.
Well, speaking to the technical aspect of having side-by-side stages, how technically do you handle the transition between lighting and sound? Does that happen via digital network, or how exactly does that switch from side to side?
Geez, I don't know. I'm not. I think it's we just have 2 of everything. With 2 light systems. Well, the PA is the same because it all covers the same area. 2 light systems. We've got 1 big video system. So, but it's basically double.
Okay, the 2014 Lockn Festival actually inspired a show here, because I was listening to Willie Nelson front and center, and I was carrying on a conversation like we're having right now, and it led into a whole show about line arrays and how good a sound system can sound when the line array is set up properly, and that's that's something else about Lockn, is that the wide distribution of sound across the front of house, across the front of the stage, incorporated with the delays, gives a nice, rich, warm sound without being too loud.
Right. Look, the way I see it, and I'm more of the concert promoter guy, is you get what you pay for. So if you get guys that are really pro at what they're doing, and you'd spend a little more money there, it's going to sound better. It's going to run better. It's going to be smoother. So we don't really cut corners when it comes to sound and lights and video and all that, or staging for that matter. I've always been interested in safety, but in 2011, I was with one of the bands that I manage up in Ottawa, Canada, and I was on stage when there was a stage collapse. The 25-ton roof fell on us. So since then, I've been an uber concert safety advocate. So we probably go a little bit overboard on those elements, and again, you get what you pay for. It's real simple.
Well, let's talk about that. In 2015, you were faced with a very difficult decision. A storm came through late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, and tell us what happened to the festival site.
Well, it was pretty straightforward. I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm familiar with vertical wind, but more like squalls on Lake Michigan. This was a microburst, which I had not experienced before. I was not very familiar with it, and it was very quick. The first thing is that we have a weather app on the phone, and so it's too accurate almost. Every couple minutes it's going off. There's a shower going on in Buckingham County, or there's there's a little bit of wind in Schuyler or something. Anyway, so the thing's always beeping, right? So it's about 6:30 or so. We start getting this sideways hail, maybe 25-mile-an-hour wind. There's no beeping. It's just, it's silent. We all look at each other and say something's super wrong here. So we got everybody down, everybody in. We had about 300 people working. Put people in, sea containers and, put them in their vehicles and that. And bang, this microburst hit. Mostly vertical wind, very erratic, vertical wind. Picking up porta potties. Porta potties are bad enough, but aerial porta potties are a little bit worse.
Right.
And so anyway, at the end, we got out of it miraculously. We had one person working for us who went under the cab of a truck and broke his hand because he put it up to block debris that was coming at him. That was it. Out of some 300 people, one broken hand. So that's a miracle to start with. So, having those instincts to say something's not right here, let's just get everybody in, really paid off. The second thing was when we came out and looked at everything, we had 3-phase 480 generator, transformer units off their moorings, sitting in 2 feet of water live. We had all of our porta potties were down. 65% of our fence was twisted and broken and pulled up by the temporary chain link fence.
Right.
All of our shade structures were gone. They were history. We'd had big tents that were aerial, 100 by 80 tents going north. So it was ripped up. It was very clear immediately that we were not going to be able to open on Thursday. And so we made the call that we're going to close on Thursday about 7 o'clock, right after the storm. We were like, there's no way we can be open Thursday. We'll let you. We might not be open at all because there were electrical inspections to pass. We had some building permit issues for we had to get all the permitting authorities back in to redo everything. I mean, it was just it was very compromised. And so we made the decision on Thursday afternoon, after passing those inspections, to compress the show into 3 days, which was pretty the most challenging thing I'd ever done. And so we had, we brought in mulch, dirt, stone people, everything we could to try to get everything set up again. And we had a lot of challenges. First of all the people had already come in on Thursday. So the normal traffic pattern is, here comes Charlottesville, and then here comes D.C., and here comes Baltimore, and here comes Delaware, in waves like this. Not the case. Everybody was already here, within a 15-minute radius. The second thing is, our traffic guy, Murph, he calls his deployment at 8 o'clock maybe on Wednesday night and says, sorry, you're not working tomorrow at 5 in the morning. That's 140 guys. When he called them back Thursday at 3 o'clock, only 50 of them were available. So now we're under-deployed on the inside of knowledgeable staff that know what they're doing. So we're trying to find, trash people that can help do the traffic, and security people can help do the traffic, and doing those type of things. I mean, we did it. I still think, in retrospect, that we got lucky in certain respects, but we pulled it off. We didn't have enough porta potties, so we would put put porta potties on flatbed trucks after the show at the show field, and we'd drive them out to the campsites where the people were. So we were kind of following people, then we'd drop them where the people were, then the campsites, and then at noon the next day we'd pick them up and then bring them back on the field. So we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff like that we were just kind of thinking, well, how do we do this? We've got all these people, we don't have enough porta potty, how do you handle it? And as a result, we had more complaints. We had people that it took us forever to get in. Well, yeah, we were under-deployed, and everybody was already there, and it was wet. It was waterlogged. Cars can only go 5 miles an hour instead of 20 miles an hour on waterlogged land. All kinds of challenges like that. But overall, I think more or less, I was doing, 4 and then maybe 2 hours of complaints myself. Because people were calling to complain after the show, just talking to people about it. And I think at the end of the day that people more or less forgave us, because the show was fantastic. I didn't see that much of it this year, but I did see Mad Dogs and Englishmen, and I saw, the Jefferson Airplane one, and there was some really, really cool moments this year. And I wish I'd seen more of it, but I had to work.
I have to agree. I was already on my way there when I got the announcement, and I needed to pick up a RV pass at Will Call, and got stuck in the mud, and decided that that was the best place for me. So I was the first person in, one of the first people in on Friday, but that was sort of the overall sentiment from everybody, was that you can't change the weather, and it was a small price to pay for the weekend of music that we got. Speaking,
I think the only option would have been to not do the show.
And, that would have been very disappointing.
Yeah, so we decided, what, we're going to take our chances, and we knew what we knew what was compromised, and we knew where we what I got to say, I think about 8:30 Sunday night we had things humming along just about right.
Now, there was only you compressed the show down into 3 days, and only Galactic, Little Feat, and Soul Live weren't able to play. So that was pretty momentous to be able to get those other acts and make sure that they were still available from Thursday through to Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, we over the years. I mean, I started in the early '80s, and Pete started in the early '90s. Over the years between us, we've developed some pretty strong relationships with talent and their representatives, and that kind of paid off. I mean, people realized, we said, listen, this is what happened. We might not even be able to open. I mean, if we hadn't passed electrical inspection, it's not our choice, So, but we were, and everybody was thankful for it, and everybody, kind of pitched in and worked together, and some people shortened their show and did things that they normally wouldn't do. It was really fantastic.
Now, did event insurance come into play during all this?
Well, yes. It didn't really, because again, it's safety first. The insurance company was very, very helpful in wanting us to put the show on.
Well, there was certainly a lot of added expense with the mulch and the extra personnel and having to set up a second time.
It's just one of those things, though. I mean, we're still, they're doing a forensic audit now. So we'll get that money, which is a huge amount of money, but it's probably still 6 months away. It's, insurance companies do what they do. They're very good at trying to, stick within the letter of what they've written, but still have it be as minimal as possible. I don't know if you've ever had to use insurance, but that's basically been my overall experience with it.
Of course, yes. Now,
but it's not primary, because if the insurance company is saying put the show on anyway because we don't want to pay the cancellation fee and it's not safe, I'm not going to do it because they're pressuring us because they don't want to, fulfill their policy. We've got to do what's safe first.
Right, protecting the patrons is key, and that was one of the questions I had was, managing the customer or expectations. Once they get to a festival and it's rained out and muddy, and I noticed that there was quite a bit of mulch laid down, and folks were moving as fast as they could to get those items addressed. But like you said, you can't please everybody.
No, you can't.
Well, I have a question on this. This all talks about like coordination. I mean, obviously your team is built from a long-standing time, but how do you approach that coordination? I mean, do you have a process that you just follow? Is it just now natural? But what do you go through to get there and be ready to do what you did?
It all starts at the beginning with an org chart, which is kind of like it's a pyramid of personnel. It's kind of militaristic, but it's in some degree everybody reports to somebody on up the chain, and it's making it clear what those positions are, what's expected of them, what their job descriptions are, and that they know what the protocol is. If we have an emergency situation that the captain of this team, that all the captains are supposed to go to the command center. And it's it's a radio call that we put out, and people know if it's a traffic thing, then the traffic type of people show up to the command center. If it's a security issue, same thing, because we have different security forces here. We can't just have one. We found we're a lot better off having a bunch of them. Bless you.
Now, how is your structure kind of laid out? How is your production team laid out?
Well, as far as production goes, we have a production manager, and everything flows downhill from him. Stage manager, hospitality, and they do different parts of the advance, or working with the stagehands to get things built, and scheduling everything so that there's enough time, or it's efficient, it runs properly, and it goes up and down the way it's supposed to go up and down. They also have to coordinate with the permitting authorities, because a stage is a structure, so we've got the buildings department coming in and checking things, and having everything signed off on properly.
Okay, so in the overall organization tree, you have both production, but you also have all kinds of logistics, security,
site ops.
Who is in charge of all that? How is that trickling down, and who's pulling all those strings? Or do you have just different department heads for each separate area that coordinate and report to a certain person?
We do. It's kind of we have there's Peter and I, and then there's a set of directors, 7 directors. And if everything ran perfectly, we'd only talk to 7 people. That'd be it. Anyway, that's that's kind of how it works. And then under those directors are captains. So like under like the site ops director, there'd be a captain of, I think it's tents and fencing. But it's split up into duties that kind of go with each other. Like normally you put up a tent and you fence near it. They both deal with straight lines. Things like that. There's water. Water is important, and we have the person that does water. He does water and septic because you have to keep them far apart from each other. So having the same guy do it, we're making sure they're not going to ever cross. It's those type of things. For just the normal things you got to do to prepare for the show. All the this and that's that have to be brought in and taken out and leaving the property as it was.
Right, because you and Peter are just a couple of guys, but it's so much logistically to handle and to put together that
Oh yeah. No, look at when we're fully operational. I believe we've got 850 people going.
Wow.
Week a show, and that half of that's security. But and then you take that's a lot of security. But yeah, you've got day and night, so between them that's 200 during the day and 200 at night, and and then there's also the security just when people come in, to go through the cars and make sure that people aren't bringing in weapons and contraband and that type of thing.
Okay. I believe George has got a question for you about.
Well, I have a question for you because, again, I do staging events, but I don't do live music events, right? Mine's corporate theater, that kind of thing. Have you had to deal with the apocryphal riders? Is this another layer of complication for you in your business, or is it really more? Not really.
I mean, we deal with it, but it's not. Our approach to it is, they come in with their rider. We have our own rider, so and we kind of look at it like our rider is going to prevail. So in our rider, everything is based on an advance. The different type of advances you would need. So you may want, 10 cases of Heineken for your bus for the ride to the next city, but you don't need it. We'll give you what you need, but not what you want, maybe. And I think people recognize that. It's not a we haven't had any issues with it so far.
Okay, no problem with backline choices, like 10 different bands could request 10 different keyboards if they're not carrying one with them.
Right. Well, that's something we just kind of build into the deals also. Excuse me. When we structure a deal, we have it so that the bands, for the money we're paying them, they're providing their own backline, transportation, hotel. That they're taking care of themselves. Our view on this is bands can take care of themselves far better than we can. I don't want to be in breach of an agreement because an artist got a king bed when he needed a double. I don't want to be getting the call at 3 in the morning when that artist is sitting in the hotel and he got a king bed instead of a double.
Right.
Our whole thing is, you guys know how to take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves, and that's worked pretty well because they do take care of themselves better than we do.
Okay, so there haven't.
I mean, when they're on site, it's very nice. We have a lot of things. Everybody seems happy with. They have what they need.
Catering, craft services, everything's pretty much
all
part
that.
Of the course.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not anything crazy like they're playing at the college and there's this unlimited budget and they're getting like 4 cases of Patron to take home or whatever.
Right on. Well, as a festival goer, I sort of weigh my choices based on the price of the festival and the lineup. Now, personally, for the 5 or 6 or 7 bands that I want to see, that I would normally pay $50 to go see, $200 for a festival ticket, is a pretty low price to me. How do you balance ticket prices against what your overall return is expected to be versus how many people you expect to show up at the festival? How do you roll the dice on that?
It's pretty much a gut thing. We look at what other festivals are charging. We can balance it against that a little bit, but we have fewer bands playing longer periods of time. You're not going to see 110 bands on our roster or something like that, like a lot of the other ones have. So, but we figure with the crowd that we have, which is the crowd we want, they're more music centric and they're going to be more engaged and they're going to recognize that and they're going to appreciate that and that they'll feel that it's still worth it even though they're getting 30 bands instead of 120. It's basically, I think the people that are coming to our show or that we're looking to have come to our show are looking for quality, but quality in the space of what they want to see versus quantity. So the pricing part is just, that's kind of, we try to look at fair market value. We certainly charge less than Coachella and Bonnaroo,
Right.
But we charge a little bit more than Mountain Jam.
Right.
So we see ourselves as kind of in that middle space, as far as how the pricing goes. And again, like I was saying, it's discussing stuff and gut, and that's how we work it.
Now, you guys typically choose one band that's sort of outside of the genre, like the Neil Young, the Robert Plant. Any guesses on what this year's band is going to be that's sort of outside of the norm jam band?
Well, to us, it's not. I'm 56, and we had Neil Young on Horde, and I gotta say, he showed a lot of the jam bands a few things about how to jam. When Neil Young goes out and does a 35-minute version of Hurricane with Crazy Horse, that's not your radio version, thing at all. It's not, yes, he's had big hits, yes, he's had huge commercial successes, but I don't see personally, I don't see many of the bands that we've booked being outside of the jam space in a lot of ways. I mean, even Tom Petty, Into the Great Wide Open, he did a 12-minute version of that, or, so to me, I never saw Creedence Clearwater when I was a kid, but when John Fogerty played with Widespread Panic and they came out and did a 9-minute version of Born on the Bayou, people were pretty excited, So, is that, it's not like we're bringing in Pat Benatar or something like that. It's if you're saying more in the classic rock space because
Right.
that's where they've kind of grown into. Yeah, but we try to keep it in the in that, like, we had King Crimson on Horde one year, and they didn't get it at all. But every band that was on Horde was standing on the side of the stage with their jaw on the floor for every show that they were on. And it just was one of the, Black Crowes, everybody were like, oh my God, look at what Robert Fripp is doing. It was incredible. So, yeah, I guess we do try to push boundaries a little bit. I mean, but some of that also comes from the bands like String Cheese with, some of the incidents they put on, the Doobie incident, and,
That was pretty crazy.
Well, that wouldn't be. We normally wouldn't have the Doobie Brothers, but with the String Cheese incident, I mean, that was pretty unique and special, and But yeah, you're right. It was outside of the box. We like doing that.
Well, I mean, I did appreciate that. It was just sort of it was a tickle to the evening that I saw in the lineup, and it's like I really appreciated Willie Nelson. He was on my bucket list of guys that I hadn't seen, and I'd never seen Robert Plant. I'd never seen Neil Young live, so I mean, I appreciated those opportunities. So, Neil
didn't play in 2013. Well, yeah, Paco broke his hand.
Right, I was thinking of
Tom Petty.
Yeah, Tom Petty.
Yeah.
I have a question about this, but all these name bands, and even some of them being named but not, out there in the mainstream, how far ahead for each festival are you planning? Are you 1 year, 2 year out? How are you doing that?
We always start as soon as we'd like to be. I'd like to have 2020 booked right now, but the bands don't make plans that quickly. Yeah, they usually, sometime around October, November, say, okay, what are we going to do next year? Okay, we're gonna tour, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. So we worked on the lineup every year right up to week of show, and last year we were working on it. What was supposed to be the opening day of the first show. So, it's something that's kind of like this ongoing evolution that we keep building on, because once you get the bands booked, then it's like, oh, wait a minute, this other artist is available and can come sit in, let's fly him in and, work out where they would have a rehearsal so that they can, make sure it's going to be great when they're on stage. So.
Is that something that the String Cheese Incident does? Is when they play with these other bands on stage, do they have a rehearsal before the show?
Yeah, no, they rehearse, and Widespread Panic has too. Every year Widespread Panic's had a special guest, Steve Winwood and John Fogerty, and so they've always done that also. Jimmy Cliff last year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I noticed. A lot of the bands have close relationships throughout the years, and it's like Widespread and Aquarium Rescue Unit playing with Colonel Bruce Hampton. He still sits in quite a bit in some of their shows. It's like another member of the band almost.
Yeah, everybody loves Bruce.
Right.
I have a real quick question. I keep bringing it back to some of the business side, but forgive me for that. But
no problem.
What I'm thinking about was all these bands. The people who come in to do their front of house or to do their mix, is it one guy mixing? And I know you said you weren't technically on the technical side all the time, but how do you agree on what board is going to be there? I mean, there's guys with very high opinions sometimes that are coming in with these people. Is that an issue at all ever, or is it really just they all work it out together before they get there?
Yeah, it hasn't been. I mean, everybody, now the technology has gotten to a place where with a lot of these, they come in and they plug in their hard drive and they've got their premixes ready to go and their plug-ins all done and that type of thing. Most of these boards can handle all that. I mean, the stuff we have certainly can, and everybody's kind of moved in that digital space really quickly. So, if we have a huge artist and like Tom Petty, for instance, and they wanted an analog board because it sounded different. We put an analog board out there next to it, but we've made accommodations like that. They had the board themselves, I guess. I don't know the details of it, but I know that one was a little different. But more or less, everybody's able to work on what we provide and bring their hard drives and their personnel, and it all works great.
Now, as far as lighting goes, I assume that you guys are using a Grand MA.
I don't know. Are we?
Well, it's for lighting versatility and networking. It seems to be the board of choice these days, and it's
okay.
I've peeked over the shoulder of Chris Carota from Fish, and he's a Grand MA guy.
Yeah, then we are.
But I noticed that you guys often integrate lighting rigs, or will you be integrating lighting rigs into this year's event? Like, Fish usually comes with some extra gear.
It's we're still working that through right now. I'm not sure. We could, yeah.
Okay. And let's see. What other questions do you have, George?
No, I was just fascinated by the logistics of it. I mean, you went over the margins, which seemed to be a very interesting thing. Did I hear you say that you actually were part of Wetlands at one point?
No, my partner Peter Shapiro owns Wetlands.
I'm sorry.
And that's how I met him. He owned Wetlands, and I was Blues Traveler's manager.
Oh, okay. Now I understand. I used to live down near it, so I was just curious.
Yeah.
About
you
going
probably
back.
met Pete.
It's possible back in the days.
Yeah, he was the mayor.
So, and you said you worked with Blue Travel. What were you doing with that kind of band? Were you doing this kind of same setup, or was there another role that you played?
I started in Chicago as a promoter in the early mid '80s. I moved to New York in '86. and worked for something called New Music Seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I got to meet a guy named Ron Delsner. So I was the booker for Ron Delsner. I was in charge of new venues, so I got a foothold in for him at Irving Plaza, Roseland, the Academy, the Marquee, and I booked a lot of shows for Ron for about 2.5 years. And then through that, I got to meet Bill Graham. So I'm proud to say I was poached by Bill Graham, and I went to run his New York office, which was a satellite office. And I did that for almost 2 years up until Bill's passing. And during that time, there was this baby band called Blues Traveler that we were working with there, and they were playing Wetlands every Monday night. And after about 4 months, they started packing it out, and they did that for about a year. And we got a deal with A&M Records and kind of started, going places with that. And then Bill passed, and we couldn't get a tour to save our lives in the summer of '92. Allman Brothers, Santana, all the tours weren't taking us, but they also weren't taking Fish or Widespread Panic or Spin Doctors, like-minded bands and friends. So John Popper and I started Hordecore, and we started the Horde Festival in '92. And the first year it was Fish, Widespread Panic, Blues Traveler, the Spin Doctors, and Aquarium Rescue Unit. And it did really, really well. And since then, we kind of sojourned on. We went another 7 years with it. At a certain point, Blues Traveler was selling out Madison Square Garden, and we had some pretty big glory years there for a while in the '90s. And towards the end of it, Bobby Sheehan passed, their bass player, and I decided, I'd kind of had my time and quit. And it was just a different time at that point. And I started, I went off into other management pursuits. I managed Ramones, Cheap Trick, a band called Brazilian Girls. And I've kind of come back to promoting through these conversations I was having with Pete. And Pete started with Wetlands, but he now owns the Capitol Theater in Portchester. He owns Brooklyn Bowl in Brooklyn, Las Vegas, and in London. And he's my partner in Lockn, and he's got a lot of other ventures also. He also owns Relics Magazine. So anyway, Pete's got it going on, and I'm kind of lucky to have him as a partner, and we're getting this show off the ground in our 4th year here. So
yeah, I just found it interesting that, did
probably
you
more
ever...
information than you wanted, but
No, it's fascinating because I think the idea was that a lot of us work in the technical side or work in this business, but you didn't say when you were a promoter, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing in 20 years, like they always ask you. It seems like it was a sort of invention is the mother of necessity, or necessity is the mother of invention for you, and it just progressed into something that became a tool that you could use rather than something you were looking to do at one point.
Both. I love music, and it was really a way to, be involved in it and try to it's not easy to be in the music business, and in any part of it. From the production side of it, you've got to, you probably got to really know what's going on digitally and be on the cusp of that all the time. That's got to be really challenging to, So anyway, yeah, but like that on where I am too, it's the same thing. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys having me on the show. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, you've made it clear that you don't know all the technical ins and outs, and that's actually kind of important because both you and Peter are the ideas guy, and you organize the show. And I guess it's important for our listeners to know that you don't have to know every technical in and out of being a festival producer, but it's more of the bigger picture that you're concerned with.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really important to recognize your limitations because I don't want to be the guy that I'm dangerous because I know too much, I would rather rely on the people whose core competency it is to do the production than to perhaps be, the guy who didn't do that and oops, the stage fell on the band or something like that. So, it's really super important, I think, to have very qualified people that know their core competencies that you can rely on to do a lot of these jobs and let them do it. You have to give them the rope, because if you're over managing them or doing this, you're going to screw it up. So we have to kind of keep an arm's distance from it, because unless I'm going to dive into production and be that guy and stop being a promoter, I'm not going to do nearly as good of a job as somebody whose core competency it is. So you have to respect that and let people do what they do and trust them.
Utilizing the efforts of other people and trusting in their abilities.
You have to. Yeah. So again, I really appreciate you guys having me on the show. Thank you very much.
Would you like to give us any plugs for the Lockn Festival before you go?
We've got a few more announcements coming. I think people are going to freak out.
Where can they find that information?
It's all at locknfestival.com.
And you had a social, I heard. What's the social that they can keep track of?
We're on Facebook, Instagram, all that.
Under the same name?
Yes.
Well, this has been another edition of The Live Life. We've been speaking with David Frey from the Lockn Festival, producer who has given us a lot of information about what it takes to produce a festival and produce a successful festival, and we're looking forward to another fantastic year in 2016. Thank you very much for joining us, Dave.
Okay, thanks so much. Good day.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.